Hello, welcome back to my channel. I'm Cassie and this is That Grim Reader. In today's video we are going to talk about all of my anti-Valentines book recommendations. So if you've been here before you might know that I'm not a romance reader. It doesn't really appeal, most of the tropes and the smut and just a lot of it just doesn't really do it for me. So I've got 3 categories of book recommendations today. Firstly, we have non-romance books which feature romance plots within them or just romantic vibes or some sort of like loving relationship. Secondly, we have books about non-romantic love, so like familial love, platonic love, friendship, all those kind of things. And thirdly, we have books about unhealthy relationships. So that's it, that's kind of the rules. Everything is something I've read and loved. Have I loved all of them? A couple of them I only liked, but they fit nicely into one of the categories, so quite a few of the books could easily fit into several categories, but I've just slotted them somewhere and I'll probably say if I think they'd go well elsewhere, but I don't know. Without further ado, let's get cracking. The first category will be the books that aren't from the romance genre but feature romantic love. Firstly, we have a series which is the the Tales from the Cafe, I think it's called, series, which is Before the Coffee Gets Cold, Tales from the Cafe, and then there's at least 2 more, but I think there's going to be millions. I think they're going to go on forever. These are the kind of short story collections, but not really. There's 4 separate stories in each book, I believe, and each one follows separate characters, but there's a cohesive like through line. The concept of these books is that there's this cafe in Japan somewhere, I can't remember exactly where. Does it say? A small back alley. I cannot speak today. A small back alley in Tokyo. There's this little cafe, and if you sit in one specific seat and order a specific drink, I think, you can go back in time, but there's a lot of rules around it. You have to stay in your seat the whole time. You can only go back in time to visit someone that's been into the cafe because you're like returning to the cafe at that point. And you can only ever do it once, and you've got to come back to the future by finishing your coffee before the coffee gets cold. That's the name of the book. The first one I adored. I loved it. I'm pretty sure I gave it 5 stars, or at least 4. I can't remember the details of any of the stories. They've all kind of blurred into one now, except there was one in which a wife wants to go back into the past because in the present her husband has Alzheimer's, doesn't remember her, and she wants to go back and see him, and it's so sad. It broke my heart. I think there's different, like some of it's familial love, some of it's romantic love. I don't think all of the stories are about love. They could be, I don't know. Yeah, I really liked the series. The second one wasn't as good, but it was still like a really nice time. I would strongly recommend. Before the Coffee Gets Cold by Toshikazu Kawaguchi, translated by Jeffrey Trousselot. I need to remember to mention the translators. But yeah, really, really lovely books. Give them a go if you haven't already, because they're great. They're pretty short. And they're pretty. They've all got cats on the cover. I'm excited to read the next one at some point this year. Then we have The One by John Mars. This is a like near future or alternate present day maybe sci-fi, like light sci-fi novel kind of. A lot of John Mars's novels have like a little tiny sci-fi twist. So in this one, if you don't know, you can do a DNA test to find out who your soulmate is, basically. But they also have to have done the DNA test, otherwise you just don't have a match. And we follow tons of different characters who have all done this. Some couples choose not to do the test because they're happily married and they don't want to know. There's one, I think, a straight guy who does do the test. He's got a girlfriend and it turns out he's DNA matched to another man and he has to deal with all of that. And it was just really interesting. I think this is probably my favourite John Mars that I've read. There's a Netflix adaptation of it as well if you can't be bothered to read it and just want to watch the show. But I did try to watch the show several years ago and got bored in the first episode, but it kept me entertained the whole time. So, yeah. It was great. It was really fun. Then we have The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Taylor Jenkins Reid. You could kind of argue that this is a romance book, I guess, but I'd say it's more just general fiction, historical fiction maybe. There is a heavy theme of romance throughout it because we're talking about this aging... how old is she? I don't even know. But she's old. She's like close to death. Evelyn Hugo, this old star from like the 50s. And this young reporter goes to interview her. She's quite elusive, the Evelyn Hugo. She's not given many interviews or anything. And she decides one day she's going to tell her life story. And we learn, about the seven husbands of Evelyn Hugo and her experience with all of them. Some of them good, some of them bad, some she was friends with, some were not good for her. And there's just a through line of it was lovely. It was great. This is the first Taylor Jenkins Reid I ever read. Did not think she'd be for me at all, but I adored this. I also like Daisy Jones and the Six, and that does have relationship vibes in it too. But they're the only two. I think they're the only two books I've read from her. I'm not interested in the more straight romance stuff. And Carrie Soto's back didn't appeal because I don't give a crap about tennis. So I might read Malibu Rising at some point. I think I own it. Maybe. But anyway, strongly recommend this. 5 stars. Loved it. Evelyn Hugo, I was convinced she was a real person by the end of this book. I thought she was an actual star from the 50s. So good. Then we have The Invisible Life of Addy Laro by V.E. Schwab. This is a fantasy book. And we follow Addy Laro, who she sort of sold her soul to the devil or something. That's not literally what happened, but she made a deal with some kind of demonic fella. And the deal was that she would live forever, but nobody would be able to retain the memory of her. Anytime she leaves a room, people forget that they've ever met her. So anyone falls asleep, they wake up the next day with her in their bed. Who the hell are you? Why are you in my bed? Get out. It's a very lonely life. But then one day she meets a man who does remember her. He follows her. She goes to a bookshop or something, steals a book or forgets to pay or just leaves. And the guy follows her outside and says, "Excuse me, what?" And she's like, "What? How do you remember me? This has never happened before." So yeah, it's kind of historically, I think it goes through quite because she's immortal basically. She starts out in what years does she start out? 300 years. She's been alive for 300 years. And we see back to her childhood and her early adulthood, and then we see her in present day when she's just had enough of being lonely. And it's good. I didn't adore where it went in the end, but overall it was just a really solid story, and it's got really pretty edges. So yeah, I'd say give it a go. I know everyone's already read this, but if you haven't, give it a go. Then we have Our Wives Under the Sea by Julia Armfield. I absolutely love this book. It was one of my favourite books of 2022, I believe. In this, we follow 2 wives. Can't remember their names right now. Leah and something. One of them went on a deep sea mission in a submarine that was supposed to last a week or whatever, and it ended up lasting 3 months, 6 months, a very long time. They got trapped down there. And then she returns one day and comes home to her wife and something's not right. She's not the same. Something happened down there. I mean, other than the fact that she was literally trapped in a submarine for 6 months. And it's just about this relationship and the grief of being married to someone who isn't the person that you fell in love with. They've changed, and it's just them coming to terms with that, and it's just so sad. It's horror-ish. Like, there's not much horror to it, really. Like, it's not gory or anything, I don't think, unless I'm misremembering. It's been a while. But yeah, I recommend this to everyone. It's like a literary horror. It's not, you know. But the writing's beautiful. I love the characters. I just love the whole thing. I was less interested because you mostly follow whichever wife didn't go under the sea. But you also get flashbacks to when whatever her name is was in the submarine, and I didn't care as much about that, really. That's where the horror actually comes into it. But I think they're just sprinkled through. But yeah, beautiful cover. Way better than the American one for a change. Loved it. It's amazing. Read the damn book, please. And finally, for this section, we have House in the Cerulean Sea and Under the Whispering Door by TJ Klune. I've talked about these before, I think. And I think pretty much everyone has read TJ Klune at this point. But House in the Cerulean Sea is about a guy called Linus, who works for this sort of government agency that checks out orphanages and homes of magical children to make sure they're up to code, and he's a stickler for the rules. And one day he gets sent out to this house which has loads of children in it, and what's the guy called? Arthur, their like carer, their parent figure. And one of these children is the literal Antichrist, and Linus's job is to check whether it's safe, whether he's going to like end the world or something. And Arthur and Linus strike up a cute little relationship, and the kids, and it's just cozy, warm, lovely, delightful times. So yeah, recommend this, definitely. And Under the Whispering Door, what's the guy called? Wallace. We follow Wallace, he's very much a dick in the beginning while he's alive, but then very quickly he dies, and he ends up at this tea room called Karen's Crossing, and he learns that he is dead, and this is like kind of a halfway house before he moves on to whatever death actually is. Like, I don't know if it ever actually says. I don't think it does. I think there's just a door, you know, like in The Good Place, if you've seen it, where at the very, very end they can go through the door even though they don't know what's going to happen. In this, there's a whispering door, and they can hear, I think maybe their loved ones talking to them, whispering under the door, and they can, when they're ready to move on, they go through the door and move into the next stage of being. Anyway, Wallace and the guy that runs the tea shop, who isn't dead, but he can see dead people, they strike up like a love relationship thing, and it's cute, it's lovely, it's sad because it's never gonna last, but it was so good. Not quite as good as House in the Cerulean Sea, but still amazing. I read this quite soon after my mum died, and it was just, I don't know, it hit me pretty hard, I guess, because of the circumstances in my own life, but it was so good. I would strongly recommend it, and I think I might read it again soon. Yeah. The second category is books about non-romantic love. Okay, so these aren't, well, yeah, obviously they're not romance, but the relationships in these are a lot smaller part of the focus generally, but it's fine. Let's go with it. So first we have The Chain by Adrian McKinty. This is, in the beginning of this, do we follow the mum? Yeah. I think we follow a mum. We follow her mum, who gets a phone call saying that her daughter has been kidnapped, and that to get her back safely, she has to kidnap another child, and then bring that child's parents, and then when that child's parents kidnap another child, her daughter will get released. So yeah, there's a whole chain. It goes on forever in theory. And it's just about the length that parents will go to, well, the first half is about the length that parents will go for their children. Like, don't hold me to this, but I probably would kidnap a child for my own child's safety. Like, I can't say for sure, but in that situation, you do what your kid needs you. What are you gonna do? Just let them, because the kid's gonna get murdered if they don't kidnap this other kid. So yeah, and then the second half gets a bit more actiony, but I loved the first half. Second half was fine too, but I just loved the struggle and the moral dilemmas that the characters were going through, trying to sort of reconcile, no, I'm a good person, I want to do what's best for my child, I'm a terrible person, I'm kidnapping a child and putting another family through what I'm going through. It was so interesting. Yeah, strongly recommend. It's like a thriller book, in case I wasn't clear just from my description. Then we have My Sister the Serial Killer by Oyinkan Braithwaite. In this, we follow a character whose sister is a serial killer, and our main character goes around cleaning up after her sister's stupid mistakes, which is all well, like her sister will go out with a guy for a bit, and then when she loses interest or when he wrongs her or something, she'll murder him. And it's all fine. Her sister's happy to just, well, not happy, but she's willing to just go around cleaning up her mess until the serial killer sister falls for the guy that the main character has a thing for, secretly has a thing for, or her best friend, or possibly both of those things. So then things get complicated because she doesn't want her sister to kill the guy that she fancies or likes or whatever. So we just follow their dynamic, basically. It's about sisterly love and, yeah, what you will do for your family. And it was interesting. It wasn't like a mind-blowing read, but I had a really fun time with it. It's one of the things I read quite early into getting back into reading a few years ago. And it was a good time. I like the cover. I like the little murdery knife thing reflection in her glasses. It's cool. Then we have Crossroads by Laurel Hightower. This is another how far will a parent go for their child thing, but this one's a horror novella, teeny tiny. In this we follow a woman called Chris. Her son died in a car accident. She's grieving, obviously, and she goes to the scene of where he died, and she accidentally ends up cutting herself and bleeds onto the site where he died. And then later on that night, or when she gets home, she sees her son again. He's like an adult. How old is he? It doesn't say. I think he was like 20 or something. He wasn't a child. And then, yeah, she then starts going further and further and giving more of herself just to see a glimpse of her son or whatever. And it goes far. It was so good. This was also on my like top 10 list of 2022, I think. It was great. I don't have anything more to say. It was just amazing. You should read it. I should reread it. It's so tiny, it would take me like an hour, if that. Then we have My Best Friend's Exorcism by Grady Hendrix. This is obviously about a best friend relationship. We follow these two best friends from quite early childhood. I don't know how old they are. They've been best friends since 4th grade. I don't know what that is in real terms, in English terms. Year 4 here would be age 8. Don't know if that's the same in America. But yeah, they've been friends since they were 8. Now they're like teenagers, like 16 or something, 17 maybe. It's set in the 80s, which, look at the vibes, look at the VHS looking beauty of this cover. Grady Hendrix always has amazing book covers. That is, got a Be Kind Rewind fake sticker on it. This is the first time I've been happy to have a fake sticker on a book. Anyway, so these two girls and a couple of other friends, they go skinny dipping, and one of the two main friends, gets lost, and the gang can't find her. They eventually find her in this weird spooky house, and then from then on she's not acting right. She says she's moody, and she like does an exorcist at some point, I believe. And it's just, the best friend, all of her other friends sort of give up on her, but her best friend just she's still there. She's with her till the end. My best friend's exorcism, there's an exorcism, and it's just, I found the end a little bit lame, but I love the journey. I love the 80s vibes. I love the friendship. This also has been adapted to like a film on Prime, maybe. It was okay. It wasn't bad. Look at this. It's like being attacked by birds. It's all the things. It's just beautiful. I love it so much. Anyway, sorry, I've just been staring lovingly at this book. This is another horror book. I can't remember. I've got every Grady Hendrix tends to have one scene that is just disgusting. Like horrifying, gory, body horror, something like that. Other than that, though, the vibes are very campy and fun. So, if that kind of gross stuff, I can't remember what the scene is in this one, but if that gross stuff freaks you out, you can probably still enjoy the story and just kind of skim that bit. It's really fun. I loved it so much. Then we have Monstrilio, which I've talked about a million times, so I'll be brief. This is about grief and loss and love of a child, basically. But not just that, there is also relationships between the adults and stuff. So we follow, initially, the mother of a child who has just died. The mum cuts out a piece of the child's lung and tries to grow it into a person. She feeds it until it turns into Monstrilio. And it's just about, I don't know, grief and love and all that stuff. I've talked about it a million times. I'm bored of hearing myself talk about it, but I couldn't not mention it. So, this is a horror book. I don't think it's particularly gruesome, really. I guess towards the end it gets a bit more. No, it is. There's quite a few gruesome scenes, actually. I take it back. But the themes of grief and loss are just absolutely spectacular. This book is one of my favourites. Was it my favourite? It wasn't my favourite book of last year, but it was on my top 10. So if you want to hear me talk a little bit more cohesively, that's not the word, coherently, if you want to hear me talk more coherently about it, I'll link my top 10 of 2023 up here or down there or somewhere, and you can go listen to that, because this was the worst description I've ever given for anything that I've actually read. Then we have Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow by Gabrielle Zevin. This is a book that I didn't, apparently I gave it 4 stars, but whenever I talk about it to anyone, I say how disappointed I am. So I don't think that's fair. I don't think I should have given it 4 stars. Maybe a 3. Anyway, we follow 2 best friends. They met in the hospital. What are their names? Sadie and Sam. So Sadie is in hospital visiting someone, I can't remember, and Sam is in hospital because he's in hospital. He hurt his foot. He's got a dodgy foot. Might have been in a car crash. Is that a spoiler? I don't think so. Either way, Sam's in hospital because he's hurt his foot, and Sadie's in hospital visiting someone. They go to like the hospital playroom thing and play all video games together when they're quite young children. Yes, recovering from a car crash is not a spoiler. It says it in the first line of the synopsis. So yeah, they bond over their love of video games, and they drift in and out of each other's lives a little bit, and they end up making video games together. And I love video games. I wanted this to be more about the video games and less about the pining. So this is technically about a platonic friendship, but also at least one of these characters does not want it to be platonic, but doesn't say anything about it, and it's just frustrating reading about this. So, like, I do get why people like it. Like, it's complicated. It's sometimes it's not that straightforward that you can just tell someone how you feel about them, especially when you've been friends with them for like 20 years or whatever. You can't risk ruining that. I get it, it's fine, but it just gave off such whingy vibes that I just couldn't really sympathise or empathise or anything. I was not particularly invested in the friendship that much as I wanted to be. I was in the early days when they were kids. I loved all of that. And when they first became friends again and first started working together, loved that. But as it went on, the further the book went on, I just found them more and more tedious. But yeah, but pretty much everyone gave this 5 stars, so if you haven't read it, you're probably going to love it because everyone did. And there's a tragic thing that happens at some point to someone, and I didn't care about that either because I wasn't particularly invested in any of the characters. But it's a story about friendship, about a complicated friendship, so it belonged on this list. And finally, in this category, we have Wrong Place, Wrong Time by Gillian McAllister. This is another what will a parent do for their child thing. It's a theme, alright? I read quite a lot of that. But in this one, we are following whatever the mum's called. I don't know what the mum's called because there's a weird sticker over my... Or is that supposed to... I don't know, there's a weird sticker on my synopsis. Whatever. Anyway, we follow this mom who has a teenage son. He's like 18, 19, something like that, 17, I don't know. He's a teenager. And one night he's gone out. The mum's looking out the window as he's walking back home late at night. This other guy shows up and her son stabs him. And she's shocked. She doesn't know who this guy is. He's like a middle-aged man, I think. And just, yeah, she's shocked. She doesn't... What? I don't know. So they arrest him, the police arrest him, and then at some point she goes to sleep, and then when she wakes up, it's the day before the murder. And she's confused, obviously, because... but anyway, basically she has to... Every time she falls asleep, she wakes up further and further in the past. And she's trying to just figure out who this guy was, what led her son to kill him, where she went wrong as a parent by not noticing what he was going through or not teaching him correctly or anything. Like, she doesn't know. She's trying to figure out, yeah, how to be a better mom, better partner, better person, how to... It's just really interesting, and the way they tell it in the sort of backwards, going back in time, just made it a lot more interesting. I loved it. I think I gave it 4 stars, 4.5 maybe. It was really, really good. I think I found the end a little bit lacking. It was a bit too, tied up with a bow. Everything's nice now. But it's fine. I know that's what people want. People want happy endings. But yeah, still, it's a great story. Final category. Don't know why I'm doing number 3. Oh, because it's category number 3. That's my logic. Is, what is it? Books about unhealthy love and relationships. First we have Magma by Thora Hjorleifsdottir. And this is very dusty. And we follow Lilia. She is 20 and she's in a relationship with an older man. And he is told, like, each chapter has a title. So, Chlamydia, Bachelors 1, Vegetarians, the X1, the Bike. And most chapters are only like Some are only a line. Others are a few pages. Like it's so like quick and compulsive to read. But anyway, the actual story, we just following this main character as she is in this relationship, which is not a healthy relationship. He emotionally and I think sexually abuses our main character, and it is so tough to read. There's one bit like she ends up self-harming, and like, there's a lot of trigger warnings for this. It's just brutal, and she's so matter-of-fact about it. Like, this is like fair. This is like 60 pages into a 200-page book, so you could consider this a spoiler, so just skip ahead a little bit if you don't want to hear. But like this one little I was raped this weekend. I swear I wasn't trying to get with that guy. I didn't even like him, but that's how it goes. One way or another, we all lose our virginity somehow. Like, she's just so like blasé about it. And then there's bits where she's just like talking about this guy that she's in a relationship with as though he, like, she's twisting everything, any like manipulative or controlling thing he does, she'll just be like, but it's because he loves me so much, it's because he cares about me. And if you sort of ever felt that way, it's just so difficult to read, because if you know better now, then it's frustrating, because you're like, no honey, no, he doesn't love you, he's an asshole. Which is a fiction. I know this is fiction, but it just hit me hard, and it's so good. I could not stop reading it. I think I read it in one sitting, apart from a few little breathers where I had to put it down for a couple of minutes to gather my thoughts. It was amazing. I love this book. I might want to reread it. I really don't reread very much, but I don't know, something about this just makes me want to experience it again, which is a little bit masochistic. But then we have Things Have Gotten Worse Since We Last Spoke by Eric LaRocca. We're not including the other misfortunes because they suck. We're just pretending this is the version that only has the main story in it. And in this we follow a woman who's trying to sell an antique apple peeler, I think it is, on a forum on the internet, and this other woman wants to buy it, and then they strike up a sort of online sapphic relationship, but it is not healthy. Things go weird, like super weird, and it's great. I really, really enjoyed it. I would strongly recommend that you read that story and that you ignore the other ones if you have to buy this version. I've read some other stuff by Eric LaRocca, and I don't know, it's a bit hit or miss for me, but for this lives in my head rent free. It's a wild time. Then we follow, then we have The Harpy by Megan Hunter. I'd never heard of this, didn't know what it was, found it in a charity shop for 50p, bought it, read it, loved it. We follow a woman who is married to some guy. They've got kids together, I think. Yeah, 2 sons. And she finds out that the husband has been having an affair. He agrees to break it off, and they come to some sort of agreement where to, even things out, restore the balance. Our main character can hurt him 3 times, whenever she wants, however she wants, and then they'll be equal, then she'll forgive him, then everything will be okay. And it's just a lot. Like, obviously that is not a healthy thing to do. If you're agreeing to stay with someone when they've had an affair, you can't just get revenge. I don't know. It was a wild time, and also it gets mad at the end. But I don't hear enough people talk about this, so I wanted to mention it because I love it so much. And again, the cover is beautiful. Is it a horror? Nah, it's just fiction apparently. I don't think it would be a horror. Nothing overtly horrific happens. It's just very uncomfortable to read some of the scenes where she is hurting him. So yeah, strongly recommend. Definitely an unhealthy relationship. Then we have My Dark Vanessa by Kate Elizabeth Russell. This is definitely an unhealthy relationship. Vanessa Y was 15 years old when she first had sex with her English teacher. Now she's 32. So in the present day, we're following Vanessa, My Dark Vanessa, obviously. And all of these allegations have come out against her, did I say English teacher? English teacher, yeah. Of him being inappropriate with students, and I don't know if it's the police or some of the students, some people are trying to get Vanessa to testify against him basically, and she still at 32 is convinced that he didn't do anything wrong, that their relationship was like equal, and even that she seduced him. And it's just, we get flashbacks to when she was 15, and like we get the first sex scene in graphic detail, and it's just so uncomfortable, so horrible. This is a hard book to read, but it's so good. It just says so much. I don't know where to go from there in my description. I don't want to give too much away. I mean, knowing the plot doesn't really ruin the story, but yeah, so it's just her wrestling with whether to, trying to figure out whether he did do anything wrong and whether to come forward, and just, it was, yeah. The ways that he manipulated her and stuff, it was just so messed up. Amazing book. Check trigger warnings, or obviously just go into it knowing that he's a literal paedophile, so be careful. But it's so good. And the last book in this category is Bloom by Delilah S. Dawson. Yes, I've talked about this loads as well, I know. And this is another horror, like literary horror. We follow, can't remember her name anymore. We follow Ro, who has just moved to this new town. She goes to the farmer's market and meets a girl called Ash, who runs her own stall, makes her own everything, grows her own plants, makes her own cakes. I think she makes her own soap and stuff too. And Ro just like instantly fancies Ash. She's never liked a girl before, but there's just something about her. She's addicted. And we follow their blooming relationship. But it's a horror book. So, you know, it doesn't end well. And it's really, really good. I gave this 5 stars. I loved it. I think about it quite a lot. You can see the ending coming pretty easily, or I could. Like, I assume most people can. But that didn't, I think I've said before, the journey was worth it. I knew what the destination was going to be, but getting there was so fun. And yeah, strongly recommend this. I do have one last little shout out, which defies everything this video is about. But again, I've mentioned it before, but the one romance book I actually do recommend is Part of Your World by Abby Jimenez. Again, I've only read like 5 romance books in my entire life, but it was just lovely. It didn't feel like just a romance book. The romance was the primary thing, but each of the characters had other stuff going on. They had friends, they had jobs, they had lives, they had family. They had a baby goat. They had an unnecessary amount of Princess Bride quotes, but I love the Princess Bride, so it didn't really bother me. I can see why it would piss you off if you didn't care about the Princess Bride. Like, I can never hear As You Wish without thinking of the Princess Bride. I mean, it's not something I hear that often in my day-to-day life, but still. Those two things are intrinsically linked. And now this is linked to that too. And I'm happy about it because it's lovely. So yeah, here's an actual Valentine's recommendation at the end of all the anti-Valentines. Hoo-ha. Thank you so much for watching this video. I've loved making all of these. I'm having a great time. Thank you for being here, and thank you to everyone that watched my little free library video. That went quite, like, that quickly got more views than I think any other video I've made so far, so that's good to know. I might make another one of them at some point. Anyway, getting off track. Thank you for watching. I will see you in the next video. Goodbye.